Shirley was born on October 13, 1938, in Durham, North Carolina, into a poor, large family. Her father passed away early. Her mother was disabled. It was a time when any black girl born into the world already held in her hands a ticket to a cruel fate. But Shirley, somehow, chose to sing, not to escape her destiny, but to face and overcome it. That voice, which began as sacred hymns in a small village church, became a symbol of faith for an America fractured by division, war, and injustice. No one could have imagined that a poor black girl, fatherless from a young age, could one day stand on the grandest stages, receive the most prestigious awards, and more importantly, reach the deepest corners of the human heart. Shirley wasn't just a singer. She was a pastor, a social activist, a living symbol of faith and compassion. She saved millions of souls, not through miracles, but through music, music that knew no color, no borders, no pursuit of fame, only truth and love. And yet, behind that spotlight was a solitude few could comprehend. Shirley never had children. Her marriage to Pastor Harold I. Williams was a deep love, but a brief one. He passed away in 2014, leaving her alone in a grand house, once filled with song, now echoing only with memories. People remember Shirley for her powerful gospel songs, but few know she was the most sleepless soul after each performance. Behind every admiring gaze were long nights of her sitting alone, thumbing through the Bible, humming old hymns, eyes distant, as if searching for someone who was no longer there. Then the cruel illness struck, without warning, without spectacle, much like how Shirley lived, quietly, discreetly, without fanfare. It started with dizziness. Then came insomnia, voice loss, and gradual physical decline. She kept performing even when she could no longer sing in full. For Shirley, losing her voice was worse than death. But she never complained. Not a word of bitterness. Not a single social media post lamenting her illness. Instead, she withdrew, slowly, bit by bit, like a bird knowing it no longer had the strength to fly. In her final months, no one knew where Shirley was. Rumors said she had returned to North Carolina, living quietly in a small house near the old church where she first sang. No lights, no more tours, no more auditoriums filled with tears as she sang, "He's working it out for you," or "Peace in the midst of the storm." Only her, an old wooden chair, a worn Bible, and a broken radio. And then, on an early autumn morning, as the leaves turned golden, she closed her eyes, like a child exhausted from singing too long, crying too much, and waiting too long for a healing the world never gave back. Shirley Caesar passed away. No grand farewell, no live-streamed memorial, no official entertainment statement, just a rushed headline: Shirley Caesar, the Queen of Gospel, has gone to be with the Lord. No one disclosed her illness. No one told how she spent her final days. It seemed universally agreed that Shirley Caesar's passing should remain in silence, just like the way she had lived. And that is what made the pain even more piercing. A woman who spent her life healing others' pain had to die alone. A woman who brought the word of God to millions had no one beside her as she left this world. Perhaps that's the price earthly angels pay. The price of compassion, of devotion, of living without keeping anything for oneself. Shirley Caesar was once an irreplaceable voice in gospel music, a living symbol of faith, virtue, and courage, who spent over 6 decades sowing hope for broken souls. Yet tragically, her death became a silent question mark, an ending no one could explain, unannounced, with no goodbyes, as if the world quietly turned away when its last angel fell. No one, not even her closest, could pinpoint exactly when her decline began. Shirley was private, hiding her illness, her tears, her loneliness behind radiant hymns. But the signs had been there for years, when she began missing annual concerts, when her voice no longer rang out as regularly. Then she vanished, like a shadow dissolving in the final light of day. When fans asked questions, the media offered vague responses: old age, weakness, rest. No one said she was sick. No one dared to write that Shirley Caesar was dying day by day, not from a visible wound, but from an unnamed illness. Some speculated Parkinson's. Others whispered lymphoma. Crueler tongues claimed depression, that her spirit had grown weary after decades of saving others without being saved herself. And so people stopped mentioning her. They turned to younger voices, new hits, blazing concerts where no old gospel echoes remained. Shirley Caesar, who once stood amid the cries of thousands, was now just a name labeled a legend of the past. The house she lived in during her final years was tucked along a small road in North Carolina, where only the wind rustled the brittle trees and the church bells chimed each morning. There were no caretakers, no full-time help, just her and a world fading away. In her last days, Shirley no longer held a microphone, no longer sang, barely spoke. She spent hours in her old armchair, holding a photo of her mother, the paralyzed woman who had raised her with tears and prayer. A sole neighbor who saw her during that time recalled that she never answered the door when knocked. She only left a note outside. "I need silence. I am not dead. I am talking to God." A strange message that chilled anyone who read it. Had she foreseen her death? Or had she chosen it as her final escape? One night, someone heard singing from her home. A fragile voice, almost broken, yet still bearing the soul of old hymns. After that night, nothing more. Absolute silence. The first to discover her death was a church volunteer who routinely brought meals to her doorstep. Seeing the previous day's food untouched, they grew concerned and called the police. When the door was opened, Shirley Caesar was still sitting there, as if still alive. Eyes gently closed, Bible open on her lap. A small candle before her had turned to smoke, and the radio by the window played a recording of Jesus, "I love calling your name." No one knew when she died. No one knew if she suffered. The medical report had one dry line: deceased from unspecified complications at age 85. But those who loved her understood. Shirley didn't die of illness. She died because no one needed her voice anymore. Shirley Caesar's death didn't make headlines. No red carpet funeral. No crowds bidding farewell. In fact, the funeral was discreet, with limited attendance. Some famous collaborators only found out late. Some wrote short tributes, others stayed silent. Were they too busy? Or did the rawness of grief keep them away? Strangest of all, her will was never made public. Rumors said she left behind a journal, a tape of final words, and an unreleased song. One she wrote on sleepless nights, meant for herself when no one was left to sing. But no one confirmed any of that. And today, all that remains is a blank space. Shirley Caesar, singer, passed away. Date of death: unknown. Cause: unknown. Will undisclosed. That loss, so eerily quiet, has made people begin to ask, why? Why was a woman who lifted an entire generation forgotten when she needed to be held? Some say she chose to go that way, quietly, without drama, without televised tears. But others say it was us, the audience, the public, society, who unwittingly turned a great soul into a fading shadow. Shirley Caesar's death was not simply a passing. It was a retreat from a world to which she had given her whole heart. A silent indictment of a music industry that forgot those who once bled for its first notes. And a quiet warning to anyone who's ever stood under stage lights thinking themselves immortal. Today, when we listen to her old recordings, we don't just hear a voice. We hear a plea to be remembered, a sigh of forgotten glory, and a goodbye no one had time to answer. Shirley Caesar is gone, but the haunting silence of her death, hidden, unspoken, unaccompanied, will remain like a wound that never heals in the hearts of those she once healed. And if one day, amidst life's chaos, you happen to hear the line, "He's working it out for you," stop for a moment. It might be Shirley Caesar singing to you from the other side of silence. But the songs remain. When someone in the dead of night, hopeless, plays No Charge and quietly cries. When a single mother holds her child and listens to You Can Make It to regain her faith. When someone mourning a loved one finds comfort in Faded Rose. That is when Shirley Caesar still lives. Not in body, but in spirit. The spirit she poured into every note, every prayer, every unseen tear. Shirley Caesar's life was a prayer song. Long, beautiful, sacred, and sorrowful, a melody that never ends, a gentle echo from the other side of silence. And as this world keeps spinning, hurried and forgetful, there will always be someone, somewhere, who plays one of her old songs and whispers. And so, after all that once shone so brightly, after the applause, the prayers, and the admiring gazes, Shirley Caesar closed her life in a quiet afternoon, without a stage, without lights, without background music. Yet that departure was not meaningless. It stands as a heartbreaking reminder that sometimes, those who bring light to the whole world leave in the darkest silence. Shirley left behind a legacy not only of music, but of spirit, gentle, resilient, and sacred. And as the world quietly turns away, her songs remain, like a beam of light cutting through fading memory. Shirley Caesar was not just a singer. She was someone who prayed through music, and even though she is gone, that voice will still echo within the hearts of those who know how to listen.